awesome professionals are like, hey, I want to keep getting stronger. So thank you for joining us. We're all about essential skills here at Workplace Education Manitoba. We believe it enhances your work, your learning, and your life. We talk about these 9 essential skills all the time, and this is what we focus on. But as it relates to today's workshop, of course, you know you signed up for a business writing, right? Of course, you know that. But do you know that it touches so many other essential skills? We have to engage and employ our thinking skills, our reading skills, computer use, and working with others, all when we're doing our business writing. This is like half of the 9 essential skills are just to write an email or a report. Unbelievable. Well, this is where I'm coming to you from today. Beautiful Selkirk, Manitoba. A little overcast here today, but thankful for a nice fall kind of day. I'm absolutely loving the weather this November. And of course, we have our workplace essential skills training centers all over the province. So no matter where you're located, we're probably close to you. And just depending on COVID protocol stuff, we can do in-person training for you. At our facility here in Selkirk, for example, we do one-on-one. What do you want to learn? Let's upskill you. You can be on your own computer plan to just learn Excel or something like that. So we love connecting with you all as best as we can. Now I understand that my sound is a little bit choppy. If that's true, I apologize. I have no control of that. I am hardwired to the router right now. I'm not even relying on Wi-Fi. So it's just good old Shaw cannot keep up today. If you're interested in more training down the road, I want you to make a note that we do have a digital newsletter that we send out every week, and I can have that sent to you very soon so that you can join and find out what's happening in November, December, but actually January is about to get announced, and we've got some really exciting training going on. Now, I received a private message here that the sound just broke up again. How about a thumbs up emoji if you're hearing this right now? I want to be sure I'm focused on you and the content and not on the techie stuff. Woohoo! Look at those thumbs. You people are so awesome. Well, we'd love to thank our funders, and we really want to give props to everyone mentioned on the screen. 4 different government agencies that have helped in the training and development, the funding of the curriculum. So we're super thankful for that. And I just want to poll y'all. I'm not American. I just like to say y'all. I just want to poll y'all. We have eaten up a good chunk of our time today because of technology. And I don't want to rob you of today's content. So I just wonder, please, I know, thumbs down to technology, but how about this? I'd like to take a little bit of a vote. How would you feel if I went past 10:30? My idea would be I will give the full presentation. If you must leave at 10:30 because you have another commitment, that's okay. You could sign off. But if you're feeling okay, I'll just go ahead with the presentation. All right. Okay. So that's perfect. And then just a note for Gail in the background, you'll want to connect with Carrie about that to let her know we're running over for this workshop. So thank you so much. I absolutely love talking about writing. I am the kind of person who keeps letters and notes and so on. I just found this Rubbermaid tote of my younger years, cards and notes from people. It means so much what you can communicate in writing. And in the context of business, what else is there, right? What we say verbally is not a historical record, and it's not even a binding contract. So being able to create historical data and meaningful processes out of written communication, I feel is one of the cornerstones of how business runs altogether. Without writing things down, we don't even post things like job ads. We don't write reports. We don't even give commendations. So you can see I have this massive list of all things business writing that we love to teach about here at WEM. Now we do a bigger workshop down the road, and we're offering that after Christmas. Our dates are not on the website yet. So Gail, if you want to pop our West Selkirk email into the chat, This is a way you could sign up to be notified of what's coming up. So whether it be business writing or other topics, we can get a copy of our newsletter to you. It's released always the first week of the month. And if you wanted to go deeper, maybe you're one of the ones who writes proposals, writes reviews, does some of the ad copy and the marketing writing in your company. We can talk about that in greater depth at some of our other workshops. But for today, we're going to cover the first three. Now, here's why we do what we do. There was a nationwide survey conducted across all industries. So regardless of what sector you're in and what level on the organizational chart you would be in, employers unanimously replied that writing skills was one of the top skills they needed for their workers in every industry. And would you describe that writing is your strongest skill? That's a good self-reflection question, because most of us rely a lot on our non-verbal. We use our body language, we use our tone. We're not considered thinking about our actual words as much as we're thinking about how to create an experience. Well, in writing, you eliminate the eye contact and all of those pieces. So your message needs to be absolutely clear. So written communication, what would be the benefit of it? Well, there's so many positives, not just so you can save old notes like I did. I think I'm going to get rid of them, don't worry. I just realized I probably don't need these ones anymore. But anyway, the positive impact you can have is so broad. Positive engagement with your team. What you write can even turn things around. Clarity, shared understanding is always the goal, whether that's a customer that you're giving a quote to, or a colleague that you're working on a project with, or even just email. Shared understanding is always the goal. And how we form our words is a key piece of that. Successful task completion, increased productivity, and hey, what business doesn't like profit, right? Can we get a thumbs up for the profit? That's what everybody likes. So when we think about the different bonuses of why effective writing is helpful, what does that actually mean? What does that look like in the workplace? How would I know if I'm successful? Not just from engagement with my colleagues, but how do I measure that? Well, let's measure that. Writing skills can be measured. You can examine writing to determine, is the writing style appropriate to the purpose, the audience, and the message? So let's take a great example. If you look a little bit up in the chat, you'll see at the top that I wrote, sorry, it's a bit choppy. Take a good examining look at that. The sorry is not capitalized. I did not choose to write it is, I wrote it's. And I didn't give context for a bigger thing that's happening. You have to know what's going on in this webinar to understand A, what that sentence refers to, and B, why did she not capitalize the S? Well, because I was just writing really quick, and in the webinar chat, we have a tiny bit of grace that when we're responding to something quickly like that, we have capacity and patience for something like non-capitalization. But see, that would be a writing style appropriate to this audience, this message, this situation. That would differ on different projects. Vocabulary and language, does it match the purpose and the audience and the message? Sometimes the message could be something like, please don't flush anything down the toilet. But if we're using really technical language to make that sentence about 12 words long, that's hard for people to understand, it doesn't match it, right? Because flushing the toilet needs to be an instant concept, but we're using crazy exaggerated technical writing to get people to understand. So how do we get the things to match? Of course, accuracy, recognizing that facts matter, the communication of ideas and messages, those being complete and accurate, organizing ideas logically so others can understand, and of course, grammar, punctuation, spelling. These things are so important. I was just reading a stat about, well, we'll get to that, but just, basically you may not get the job if there's a typo in your CV. Self-editing your own writing is number one. Like, this is the thing I do want you to take away from today. And I'll give you a trick a little later on how to up your game on that. And then applying writing skills for completing tasks. So you could actually measure how your writing skills are, not just based on other people's feedback, but examining it for yourself. It's important for us to understand there is a difference between internal and external communication. And so more about the top half of the slide is talking about internal customers, people who speak your language, know why you've created the report, they've maybe even requested or initiated the conversation. So internal communication looks differently than external communication. So further down on the slide, when we're talking about our clients, subcontractors, potential customers, maybe some of our professional associations and membership groups we're a part of, partners, suppliers, and even future suppliers, some of our most delicate communication comes in trying to solicit a new supplier for a great price. How we talk with them, how we communicate our needs and our budget tolerances will determine whether that supplier will even work with us or not. So in our minds, we do want to have a clear distinction in understanding what are all the internal pieces and what are all the external pieces in the type of writing I do in my job. And I do submit, even if you do a tiny thing like, I don't know, who works in a shared workplace where you've ever had something in the fridge and it went missing. That's happened to me in a workplace I was in, not here, of course, but are you the one who has to make the sign to post on the fridge to say, don't take any food unless your name's on it? That's internal communication. Are you the one writing a formal quote to a potential customer? That's external communication. So knowing that there's a difference is so critical in making sure you have the right language and you use the right proofing techniques. Because if we don't, there are consequences. It stinks. I want to say hello to Terry. Thanks for joining in when you could. And guess what, Terry? You're not that late. We had technical problems and we're going to run a little bit over time. So thanks for being with us here today. Consequences of poor communication stink. We know what they are. You know what's not on the list? That's really the biggest one is embarrassment, right? How about like the crying emoji? If you've ever had a typo, did a reply all, wrote the wrong word, just wrote something embarrassing. None of you have ever made that mistake, because I've so made that mistake. And that's actually the number one thing, right? Our personal pride and reputation is absolutely impacted by writing skills. So all estimations, you could read so many business reports on this, but at the end of the day, when many researchers are trying to summarize what happens to create miscommunication and error in the workplace, what is it? 9 times out of 10, it's about written communication and miscommunication. One of the positive benefits of getting it right would be looking at this report that came out from Science Daily Medical Journal. And they really measured how the written and verbal communication was going at one particular hospital. And they found out that by paying attention to their communication, they actually reduced medical injuries or errors by 30%. 30% is a pretty massive number when you're dealing with people's health, Nesta. Similarly, attendees at a business seminar were asked, how many of you received badly written reports, letters, and emails? I'm going to guess that's all of you in this seminar today, because you're like, why does this keep happening? How do we cure people's problems? Well, guess what? At that seminar, they all felt it too. Every single one of them raised their hand. So what are some of the writing problems that were identified? This is the key. We all could have sympathy. We all could be there. But hey, what were the specific things that irked all these business people who were surveyed? Well, here's some of their complaints. How are you doing with run-on sentences? I gotta confess, this is a problem for me. I just sort of love to make run-on sentences in my written communication. I only catch it when I edit. Oh, I'm sorry, I understand that there's a bit of technical difficulty and perhaps you can't see the slide. If you can see the slide, give me a thumbs up. If it went black on you, give me a thumbs down. And so some are having bandwidth issues, so it may be that the slides will just take a second to load. So writing that rambles and is unclear, this often happens when someone's trying to sound smart. Really, we ramble and we add words and sentences when we just want to sound intelligent and use $10 words. Punctuation and grammatical errors, I think it should be on the top of the list. I feel it's the most common and it's the hardest on your reputation. Misused words, an offensive, belittling, or annoying tone, and hey, very, very often, more times than not, someone doesn't even intend to do that. It's just that their writing presents in that way. Getting greetings wrong and disorganized text is major bad. So 3 tips to keep your writing plain. Plain writing is the goal. We do talk about that in our email etiquette class. That plain writing is actually proof of the skill of the writer. It actually proves you're more articulate if you can keep things plain and concise. So keeping it concise, keeping it brief is one of your goals. Now, one of the great ways to do that is to break things down. So at the bottom of this list is my absolute #1 favorite. I love tables. Are there any table geeks out there? Like to use Microsoft Word and insert tables into your documents? Anyone a table geek like me? Oh, you table geeks, we're like soul siblings here because I love it. And if you haven't experimented with tables, please do. You can make all the lines disappear on them, but you just create a clean, orderly system on a page to be able to have information presented with breaks and spacing. It's way easier than tabs, so please give yourself a YouTube tutorial on how tables can change your lives. And of course, breaking things up into the short paragraphs. So generally 1 topic per paragraph is your goal. If you're working on an email or a document that has multiple paragraphs and pages, you're going to want to break it up into headings, and then you're thinking of paragraphs as thought changes. So new thought, new paragraph. And then, of course, my colleague Carrie loves to say this one, don't use acronyms, no one understands them. So keeping that in mind too, that in your writing, particularly professional writing, these acronyms need to be referred to early on in the document. If you do plan on using them later, you can pop them into parentheses, but generally speaking, you may want to avoid those. And again, just to underscore, really the evidence that you know your material is the ability to explain it in plain language. So let's give you 5 principles that you can take away as your sort of your rules, your foundation, your subfloor that goes underneath everything else. Do I recognize that time really is money? When you create a written piece, you're actually taking life away from other people. Sorry, isn't that awful? You are asking them to give up their time to read what it is you've written. And time is actually hours of your life. So if you think of it in that most dramatic cost way, you do want to understand, I need a clear purpose for this because I'm asking someone to give up hours of their life for something I wrote. And is it nonsense? Could it be saved? Is there something better I could do with this? And then, am I really evaluating my clarity and my concisiveness? So I really appreciate this quote. There's a time and a place for creative figures of speech and poetic turns of phrase. That sounds poetic, doesn't it? But rarely is a business letter that time or place. Get to the business of the business. And then understanding your audience. We dig in deep on this in our writing workshops because this not only is very broad, but it even can change in your own workplace almost without notice. So am I writing to the intended audience in a way that they would understand, not in a way that would make me look good? Is it in a way they would understand? And tune your tone, write that down, tune your tone. When you go back and do your reviews, you find out that you might be speaking a little too familiar or maybe even a little too severe. And minding your form. What is it you're actually writing? And if you've been like me, you've had to write something in the past, show me a emoji if you feel like this is true. Maybe you started out writing a letter, but you got so deep into it, you realize this is actually a report. I need to turn this into more of a historical document and make an actual report, because this all just doesn't fit in a letter. Or the vice versa. Maybe you've tried to do something a little too big and grandiose and realized this is really just a simple memo here. So minding your form means not only going into it intelligently, but being open to change on the fly. Now, who knew that the Spice Girls would teach us about writing? Did you know that? I didn't know that. Does anyone even know who the Spice Girls are? I'll tell you what, I won't sing it for you, okay? But the lyrics from that one song are so phenomenal for writing, because they say, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. And then what's the next line? I know you know it. I know you're singing it. They invite the listener to, they say, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. This is the whole goal of business writing. I'm telling you what I want or need in my document in a way that invites you to respond. So I'm sorry I ruined you, but Spice Girls have the foundational key for business writing. That just makes me laugh. 5 ways to speak in a way that the reader wants you to. Whoever is going to read that document and give up years of their life or minutes of their life to read your stuff, they're secretly telling you what they want you to do. One thing is they want you to sympathize and understand their industry so that you're writing with authority on that topic. So let's say you went ahead and did a blog post that said, I don't know what industry you're all in, but let's say it's education. If you did a blog post that said absolute best education practices and posted that, but then the writing was all about carpentry, that's not congruent, right? So in that sense, it doesn't fit. Your reader wants you to talk with them, not at them. So thinking, how do I present information in a way they would understand it and they would feel respected by it? I'm big on that. You give honor to people when you communicate to them in a realistic way and in a respectful way. Figure out what questions they're asking and answer those, especially in email. Email's like the giant written business communication machine in our workplaces. So what is someone actually asking? Figure it out, because replying with an answer that doesn't make the email chain end causes a lot of setbacks in business productivity. Consider their reading experience, and I might submit to you to think about even how they're reading this, on what medium. Is it paper? Is it digital? Is it on a mobile device? What's their experience and where are they at? Are they an unhappy customer already and now I'm writing to respond to them? What's the experience they're going to have with interacting with my writing? And then inviting them to learn more or to respond to what it is you've written. So greatest error of all time, not editing. This is so difficult to do because editing feels like a waste of time, because we get this big like dopamine rush when we get all of our words out and we get something done, and then editing it does not create that same feeling. So I do submit to you that the #1 error of all business writing is only in the editing. It's not actually in the planning and composition or even the form. It's in the lack of editing, because the editing will pull together all those aforementioned pieces. And I would submit the number 2 bad writing practice would be delivering bad news by email. And that's not just bad personnel news. That might be that maybe you're even reporting on the quarter's numbers. And maybe that could be in a systematic report that could show the whole year's deliverables instead of just the quarter. And so people aren't just getting a 2-sentence email dump on their head that makes them feel like garbage, but instead they have information that comes within a greater context. So, how are your own skills? How are you doing with that? I want to give you a second to just take down that little survey there. Take down that address, because you can actually do this little online survey about you as a business professional. How are your communication skills? And they're probably not bad, because you're the person who signed up for this webinar, and continuous learner people are so good at this. So it's something you can grab and try to do. I'll pop it into the chat for you there. Just for kicks, just to see, because whatever communication art skills are, we're not only talking about writing, we're talking about verbal and non-verbal. Just give yourself those checkups. Now here's how to really organize ideas to make their job easier. First thing is organizing whether you think you need to win the reader over. Now, if you're trying to sell a book, you're trying to win them over, that you want them to commit to reading your whole book. Or are you responding to a customer request or concern? What's your goal? So organize the concept right at the beginning in your greeting and your opening to understand, maybe I need to let them know this is a positive engagement. It does take 12 positive reaches to overcome one negative experience someone had with you or your company. Number 2 is not all communication intended to be positive. This is like totally from my heart, this one, because I'm big on the purpose of any confrontation is always restoration. Similarly, even in business, if we're trying to present corrective communication, if we want to give, let's say, those bad sales numbers, and we want to deliver the bad news that we got to make a big cut in the company, it sounds like bad news, but it's actually intended to be positive. The goal is to save the company. The goal is to save as many jobs as possible. The goal in correcting behavior, or even telling a customer that they're wrong, the goal is to build your brand in a powerful way. So even when the communication is tough, we want to remember that the goal is to create a positive outcome. And what medium will be used? We touched on this. How will people do when they're trying to read this? What's their format? What is the device? And you would know this about some of your colleagues. You might know they're on a certain computer, but if your colleague gets sent to a remote town, you might know they're not going to have high-speed internet. So sending them a 12-page Microsoft Word document is not going to be helpful. It's going to take them forever to be able to open that, right? So we can even think about, as we organize all of our thoughts, how will it be delivered on what type of platform? And are my thoughts separated? This is probably the biggest one you can take, is just to rethink your paragraphs and not leaving huge spaces in between each paragraph. You want people to be able to see, especially if it's digital communication, you do want them to not have to scroll endlessly to get through the big muddy mess of what you have to send to them. How about this quote? Do you have any feelings about this quote? This is written by a writer. So he's a professional writer of books and so on. Show me your emoji, your feelings on this particular quote. Oh, right? I feel like in some ways that should be beside our computers. Because if we had this perspective, we would it's one thing to do your research, and you do need to do it. Do your research, have your information, your data, be intelligent about what's backing up whatever it is you're writing. But this is where good writers spend all their time. It's all in the editing. That is where you hang out. That is where that's it. That's where you hang out. So knowing that, I want to take you into a really practical tip. Now, here's some rules for editing, so you can make a note of these. You're really wanting to give demonstrations and illustrations. You want to draw connections between thoughts and examples. So as you're writing, you're thinking about not adding a ton of adverbs and adjectives. You're not writing directions in the opposite way they're intended, and you want to use an active voice or maybe a passive voice. Do you want to be in first person or third person? So do you want to say I did this, or do you want to say Rochelle did this? So looking at that voice and making sure it matches through the entire document. And absolutely, Annie, I'm so like virtual high-fiving you. The read it aloud saves you so many times. And one tip on that is actually don't read it out loud from top to bottom. Read it out loud from bottom up. So start with your last paragraph, read it out loud. Go to the next paragraph up, read it out loud. And it separates you from the emotion and the flow of how it's been written. When a spell check program or an editor corrects a misspelling for you, why don't you pop that word up on a Post-it note and stick it on your desk? And then just the familiarity of seeing that word or relying on that Post-it note the next time you go to use that word in your writing. This is really important for industry-specific writing. There's a lot of medical words that just don't make sense in how they're spelled. They're not phonetic at all. So recognizing, hey, here's my common ones, and I want to be aware of that. The other thing is you can also wake up your eyes to your own editing abilities and not become blind to what you've written if you read backwards in a Z. So look at my little slide there of where it says when a spell check program. I have that little paragraph all together. If I wanted to proofread that, I would use spell check first, but spell check won't catch real words necessarily. So I may intend to write something and then write the word orange instead. And spell check knows orange is a real word. So it may not highlight it for me. It might catch it grammatically, but I don't want to rely on that. So if I had to proofread this little paragraph, I would start down at the word spelling, and I'd figure out in the bottom right corner, what is spelling connected to? Well, it's connected to that one sentence. So let me proofread, let that word and its spelling become old hat to you. And then let me pop up to middle left, and then let me pop up to top right. And especially if I'm working through a big document, by using that backwards Z as I go through my document, I'm separating that blind eye that I could otherwise so easily develop looking at my own words. And caution, emotion is the worst part of it. Now, we like to think emotion is an angry thing, right? Like, settle down, don't fire off an email when you're completely irate. That's good practice. But there's often emotion in things you want too. So maybe you want a job and you're writing a cover letter. Maybe you want a sale and you're writing an email to a customer. The emotion connected to those can be your biggest enemy with the editing. So if you're not sure and it matters to you, use another person also to just read that and proofread that. Because some of the studies in HR that I'm reading about HR professionals that screen people, it's 70% of screening people, so professionals who have to take in resumes, 70% of them give you a black X if there's any typo in your curriculum vitae. So important to understand. Now we could take you deeper. I could talk about writing till the cows come home, and we could give you more practical tips and practicing things out. So if the writing workshop is something you'd like to do, it's typically just a couple hours long, and sometimes we even break it up. When we're doing it digitally, we might even break it up into 1, 2, or 3 sessions, so that's just bite-sized pieces. If that's something you're looking at doing to strengthen your professional reputation, I encourage you to email us, and I'll pop that into the chat for you. And just reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in the writing workshop. Or like we talked about earlier, hey, I'm interested in the newsletter. Let us know which one you're interested in, and we'd happily invite you to that. If you are using writing in your workplace, you know what a phenomenal tool it is to be able to win friends and influence people, right? So we want you to be strong. I thank you for joining us today. I give you a giant pat on the back, and I encourage you to take some of those editing tips and those process writing tips with you today as you go into your professional writing. Have just a fantastic day, and happy fall, y'all. See you soon.